Thank you so much, Treva. It's fun sitting. I sat there on purpose because I was like, we don't get to sit there often. We just yesterday did the straw votes on the budget, and which is kind of for to not use jargon. That's kind of the when we're actually agreed on what's the budget is going to be, and so we've been working really hard on that, and so it's really good to be here to remember the day after that. I want to thank Treva for stepping up. Jason and I were talking that the best job, and I know Councilman Friedson says this a lot, the best job on any board or commission is former chair. And so he's in that very vaulted position. But I also thank Treva that she stepped up and she said, we're going to see how this goes. And I said, because this is a labor of love, but I think there's no better person. You mentioned 6 generations to be chairing this right now. And to all the commission members, thank you for all your hard work and dedication. To Jim Stowe for staffing and his team. We have Frederick Hawkins here from the African American Advisory Group. And you know my colleagues, Councilmember Friedson and Councilmember Lukey are here. I want to thank Councilman Rice, who had to run off, and he's running Manna Food Bank now, as some of you may know. And it's tough times right now. One of the things we passed in the budget was additional food resources because we know more people are hungry. We've had a 32% increase in people experiencing homelessness from year to year. The lines at our hubs, which we started during COVID, are back to be much more full than they were. They're overflowing, they're long, and we know we're heading into a tough time right now. We're in a tough time, and we're heading into even more of a tough time. So it's even more important that we're here to kind of remember what happened and why it happened and how it's connected to what's happening now. I was mentioning to some folks outside that, as there were 3 documented lynchings in this county, right? I'll often say it's really important to say documented because we have this county is still very rural, but imagine it in the 1800s. And there was a lot happening that was not captured. And that's anywhere, but, so we know that there are other stories, and I always think we should remember those, even though we don't know. There wasn't an article written. They weren't all pulled out of a jail. It happened, and we want to remember them as well. But of the 3 documented lynchings, 2 that occurred with men being dragged out of this building, as a black man, I think of that often walking in here, quite often. I was talking to Craig. There have been 3 black men to serve on this council, ever. Ike Leggett, Craig Rice, and myself. And I think about the awkward synergy of that. So I haven't said this to anyone ever, actually, publicly. I'm looking forward to the day when we cross that threshold where we are on the other side in the positive ledger of someone being able to serve this county that would outnumber the amount of black men who have been lynched here. I think about not only that it happened, but the psychology of the people who participated in it, and the permissive nature of this community that allowed for it to happen. To drag people out of a building that was a public building. We have our head of corrections here. He knows how important in the sanctity and the rule of law that you are securing individuals, residents who have been accused of or committed crimes, but they are due process. And the fact that would be violated, the fact that it would be a celebratory event, the fact that it occurred across this city and county, and people were, then I fast forward and I think, because history is so important, because you have to remember why you're remembering, and we're remembering for all the reasons, and that was beautifully put by Jason outside, for all those reasons. But we're also remembering because it is directly connected to help us provide the roadmap and connective tissue to where we find ourselves today. And we've had many unfortunate deaths of young black people and others in this country. But I think of one in particular a lot, and that's Tamir Rice, who was a 12-year-old boy in Ohio who was playing with a toy gun, something that I have done, probably many people in this room have done, at a park, and was shot and killed within 30 seconds when an officer arrived. And it's not so much that he was shot and killed. That's horrible, of course, and there was no accountability in this case. But it's that when the officer arrived and when it was reported into 911, they said, we have an 18-year-old boy with a, or 18-year-old man, black male, excuse me, with a gun, right? And then when you connect that to, okay, well, he was 12. If you've seen pictures of him, he was a young boy. Why was he perceived to be 18? Why was he perceived to be as such a threat? It's connected to the same intentional work that was done over hundreds of years in this country to dehumanize, to devalue, to make seem dangerous, that contributed to his death. And so the same things, I think about the psychology of the people who dragged Mr. Sidney Randolph and who dragged George Peck out. What they were thinking, they obviously perceived a threat. They perceived something to be less, those men to be less than human. And I think we have to remember that and not be scared to draw that connective tissue, because the same things that led to their deaths are still leading to deaths today. And not even that, those are the most extreme cases. They're leading to health disparities when you show up at the doctor and we don't think that you're in pain. They lead to housing inequality when we don't think you can qualify for the loan. Go down the list, educational inequity. And we have to be vigilant in working against all those things, and you can't do it if you don't recognize the psychology that's still at play for so many. And so part of the work of this commission is to document that, to remember that, to remember Mr. John Diggs Dorsey and Mr. Sidney Randolph, who were taken out of this building, to also remember Mr. George Peck in Poolesville, but to also recommit ourselves to eradicating the thought process, the mentality that we see present, unfortunately, in the White House right now, in a lot of this administration, and in our community that's still here, that seeks to dehumanize, to devalue, and to disconnect. Last thing I'll say, we do and I want to thank our racial equity manager, Selena, who's here as well, Selena Singleton. She deserves a round of applause for all the work that she's doing. We do an exercise in racial equity training. If you've done this, you may be familiar with it, where they put a bunch of big Post-its on the wall, and they write down Black, white, Asian, Latino. I've done this probably 20 times, and they give everyone a marker, and they say, okay, and it's usually a group, maybe this size, maybe a little smaller, and they say, okay, I want you to go up there and write down everything you've ever heard about those people. And I've seen it done 20 times. Without fail, the black one is always overflowing. Not that you necessarily believe these things, but that you've heard them, right? With negative, it's 80% negative. Lazy, dangerous, violent, go down the list, right? The white one is mostly positive, has less on it. The Asian one, model minority stuff, mostly, but less on it. The Latino one has negative things on it as well, but it's usually not as much. It's a reminder that we all have these biases. We know them, we're aware of them. We have to actively work against them. We have to actively work against them because they have real life consequences for people. And so I just went a little longer than I wanted to today, but I want to thank this commission. I'm so honored to have played a small role with Councilmembers Reamer and Rice in putting the bill forward to do this. I think we've just scratched the surface of what we can do with this commission, and we've just scratched the surface of how we apply it to our current present day. and how we take those lessons and tie it to the inequities of today and use that to motivate us to make sure everyone has opportunity here in Montgomery County. So thank you so much, and congratulations on this next step in the journey. Thank you.